Welcome back to the Ludiverse. It's me again, your host, Jay, and have kind of a professional level guest today, which is new and fun. Would you care to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. My name is Sir Ezra. Anybody's welcome to just call me Ezra if that makes it more comfortable. I'm the Director of Education at Sanctuary LEX Studios. I am a BDSM educator, performer. I'm a intimacy coach, and most recently, I'm the author of a new book.
Oh, okay. Director of Education. That's so like, is it just like sexuality education that you're in charge of, or is it just a general education thing branched out on?
Yeah, more specific than just sexuality, it's focused on BDSM. So bondage, discipline, sadism, masochism, dominance, and submission.
And your book. What is your book called?
My book is called Mind Fucking Mindfully, A Guide to Mental Manipulation for BDSM and Sadomasochism.
That's quite a title.
It's a mouthful.
That's one. It will definitely stick in the mind, though.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I wanted to get all those key terms for searching.
You have a pretty wide array of topics that you're involved in. I think the best way to start is, how did you get started in the education part of all this?
Sure. So I was always really focused on service. I, volunteered a lot when I was young, and as I found the BDSM community, I went to a lot of classes. That's how people become educated in this space. Typically, people will teach classes, and sometimes there's like a mentorship situation. And I just wanted to contribute. Like, I felt so welcomed and I felt so at home that I wanted to give back as soon as I had the opportunity to. At first, that was like volunteering to help set up at events or break down, or volunteering at fundraising events and things like that. And eventually, I realized that I've been developing this education, and I was already presenting professionally in my previous life, and I said, well, let me take these skills that I've gained and apply them to BDSM so I can give back even more.
Well, giving back is always a good thing, because if all you do is take, what are you even doing it for?
Yeah, well, and I don't think everybody needs to be a teacher, but certainly volunteering, I think, is something almost everybody can do.
So the journey from aide to director of education, that's going to have quite a few hurdles to get over. Was there any like major challenges you had to face to get up there, or was it just the position came open and you were best qualified?
Yeah, it's a classic case of knowing the right people, right? So at first I had a mentor that was a very bad fit for me. They didn't last in the community because they were kind of trying to take advantage of people, and I was on that list. And then I reached out to somebody who I saw as a pillar of the community, and said, hey, like, this happened to me, and I've been searching for a mentor for so long, and I just feel like, if all I can find is an abuser in mentor's clothing, so to speak, that it's just never going to happen. And that person was like, well, I'll do it. And that was Mistress Cyan. So she runs Sanctuary LEX Studios, which is the largest dungeon in California. And so all of a sudden, I had the ear of somebody who runs a dungeon space. And I also felt like beholden to her because I felt such a debt of gratitude. She's been there for me for the last 6 years. So, I really feel a huge debt of appreciation for the support that she's been able to offer. And not everybody can weigh in on these complex issues of polyamory and master slave dynamics, dominant submissive stuff, navigating the public play spaces. Those are real challenges, and a lot of people are not equipped to help with that. And so she helped me a lot. And so the first thing I did was I realized that there was a need for dungeon monitors. So I spent, I think, a year and a half as a dungeon monitor. So, twice a month I would go in and basically assist throughout the duration of a public BDSM party and make sure that everybody was as, playing as safely as possible, and, nobody was acting recklessly, or, there's also like helping people feel welcomed and stuff like that. which I really was happy to do. But I realized that again, in my past life, I was organizing symposia, I was managing conferences, and I was like, how can I take the skills that I've learned in my previous life and apply them to this new space? And I realized that Sanctuary had this opportunity to host classes, and this was pre-pandemic, right? So a class would be, in person physically, and 5 to 50 people would show up, and this instructor would like go over some topic. And again, that's how we learn in the BDSM community is we go to classes and we talk to people. And I realized that that opportunity was kind of like a hidden opportunity. Like you had to know that that was available, and you had to know that you could go and talk to Mistress Cyan and ask for the class. Say, hey, I want to teach this class. Can we bring it in? And again, in my previous life, like I had been soliciting presenters. I had been bringing people to the table and organizing like days-long symposia. And I was like, why aren't we doing that here? Why aren't we focusing on presenters that we want and like really creating a welcoming and inviting space for them to get exposure and to reach an audience that they don't already have access to? How come we don't have a coordinator, right? And so basically I invented the role, and over the past year and a half, we've been doing as many as 2 presentations a month, and it was pretty consistently two presentations a month, and we've just started tailing off a little bit this summer, but hopefully we'll get back on the horse.
They say necessity is the mother of invention, so saw a role that needed to be filled and found a way to fill it in. So kudos on that.
Yeah, and I like it a lot because I'm a really independent worker and I get a lot of latitude. Like the whole 2 presentations a month thing was my idea to like set it up that way. And also, the pandemic has been actually kind of a blessing for this particular job because I was pitching that we go online, in November of 2019. I was saying like we need to have these classes available online so people can watch them all over the world. And there wasn't a lot of traction. And all of a sudden, that's all we could do, right? And where I was expecting, 5 people to 10 people to 20 people on a regular day, with people being able to tune in from home in their pajamas, we saw 90 people attend one class.
It's impressive. If nothing else, the pandemic has helped branch out people's need for information because they know now that they can get the information without having to dress up and leave their house and be out of their comfort zone and deal with. So, being able to do it from your sofa in your, with your bunny slippers on is definitely a plus.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of those resources were available before, but they were not like streamlined and they were not expanded out to full capacity. And now we're all like having access to this online forum, right?
So these online classes, is there a fee to attend them, or is it just kind of a service that's being provided?
Yeah, usually there is. I think there are some free classes out there. Some people do like donation based so that nobody is turned away on the basis of price. I try to keep my classes down to $10 a class because I don't feel like that really prevents anybody from showing up if it's something they value. And it also gives people an opportunity to get paid for their instruction. I think a lot of times there's so much volunteerism that happens in the BDSM community that a lot of times venues will just expect educators to come and do it for free, right? And I think that's a troublesome habit because it excludes people who are not privileged enough to be able to volunteer, right?
Well, the price point is definitely attainable because I've seen classes in the same vein go for hundreds of dollars and they're only an hour class. And that's just not attainable for a lot of people, especially with the pandemic keeping people out of work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can see $100 for a class that is like a professional class. Like if you're already doing this for work and you want to develop a specific skill in that vein, then that makes sense because that person is sharing their money making skills. But most of the time we're talking about people who are developing skills for their personal lives.
What kind of challenges, like your everyday educators, that teach general stuff, English and automotives and your general kind of education stuff, they have their own challenges to face. What kind of challenges are there in educating something as very specific as BDSM?
Well, I think that there's a gap that creates itself based on people's perceived need, which is interesting, right? So we generally see fewer dominants and fewer males attending classes. And I'm not sure, I can only really hazard a guess as to why that is. But my guess would be is because, this masculinity often teaches us that we shouldn't ask for help, right? And also dominance, there's this like fake it till you make it attitude. And so people are often adopt this attitude of like, I know everything, I don't need anybody's help, which is really troublesome because the dominants have so much control in the situation, they really need to know more. And so what we end up seeing happen a lot is that the submissives will attend classes, the submissives will read the books and end up educating their dominant because the submissive is actually sort of dictating what level of education the dominant should have. And then the other component is like, money makes a huge difference, right? And I'm happy to have a class with 5 people, right? But if talking about an instructor who's traveling, let's say from San Francisco to Los Angeles, and 5 people show up, that doesn't really contribute much to the cost of the ticket to fly down, right? Or the cost of gas if they've driven. And the community really is in a position to support specific things. They're really in a position to support certain activities. And if the community as a whole says education is really important, we really value the time of these people who have spent, years and sometimes even decades honing a craft. We really appreciate their time and we want to make sure they're compensated. We want to make sure that they, are welcomed and can afford to come back, then that's going to happen. Then those things are going to really happen, right? And so vote with your dollars, right? And so I think that's a challenge that we really face. So like a lot of people will come to me and say, hey, like how come, we don't get the advanced classes? How come we can't have more advanced classes? It's because nobody shows up to the advanced classes. Like 2 or 3 people are going to show up to an advanced class. It barely pays enough to put the lights on, so, the community members invest in their education. And when they do that, they create opportunities. Like currently, there's no one that I know of that makes a full living teaching BDSM classes. And it's not because there's nobody who's qualified, right? It's because there aren't enough butts in seats. So that would be the biggest issue that I think that we face.
Yeah, I can see that being. But with the classes moving to online, that's got to make it a little easier to at least hold some kind of a class because you don't have to worry about travel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no cost of traveling associated with teaching right now while we're doing things online. So that does make it easier. With the Sanctuary LAX, I've been able to get instructors from all around the country, even out of the country, to present. And I haven't had to have that conversation of like, yes, we can help you pay for the plane ticket, right? Because usually we just can't.
So if somebody listening were to be interested in taking one of these classes, is there like a set website?
Sure. Well, my first recommendation would be to sign up for our mailing list. When that's like houseofalgos@gmail.com. That's houseofalgos@gmail.com. And just, message us a mailing list, and we're going to let you know every month what's happening. The other thing that I would recommend is that I have a whole host of classes that have been recorded that are available online. And that's on my Gumroad. And again, that's gumroad.com/houseofalgos. And that gives you an opportunity to watch any class that has been recorded in our series at any time. I think the challenge for a lot of people is that we schedule these live classes and life gets in the way. You see a class you love, but you're like, damn, I'm like at work or I'm still driving while that's happening. So this is a good opportunity to watch those recorded classes. And, lastly, I would say if, finances are a real issue, then Patreon is a good solution because I have most of those classes available to all of my Patreon members. So if you don't want to pay for each individual class, you can go on the Patreon site, and that's going to be patreon.com/House of Algos.
I'll make sure to get all these links to put in the show notes. So if anybody missed them while being said, they just click right.
Awesome.
So, all right. So the initial message that you had sent me saying that you wanted to be on the show at all, you mentioned that you were also a performer. So what kind of performing do you? Is it like a live show thing?
Yeah, so I do BDSM performances, and those are I think places we've done them are like DomCon, LA Kink Pride, Folsom Street Fair, and it's basically like a demonstration. It's a show, it's entertaining, but it's a demonstration typically of some of the edgier kind of play that we do. So like knife play, fire play, electro play, things like that seem to be, whips also seem to be like real crowd pleasers because they're things that maybe people haven't seen happen yet, or they're things that they don't feel like they can do at home. I think as a performer, I can go up and I can have like a really hot scene that's just like spanking and biting. But if that may be pleasing to me, that may be pleasing to my partner, but it's like not as sensational because everybody can spank and everybody can bite, right? So I tend to bring in those heavy guns, so to speak.
So you primarily just do these performances at like conventions and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes we have parties, and we'll have like scheduled performances on stage during the parties, and those tend to be like more casual. But again, sort of the same rules apply. That the more sensational, the better. Fireplay makes a really good stage performance.
Well, people do like a spectacle.
Uh-huh.
How did you get started in performing? Do you have a voyeurism, exhibitionism kind of thing going?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely exhibitionistic. But basically these parties, BDSM parties, are this like semi-private setting. They're not typically you can't close the door and do what you want to do. You leave the door open so that the dungeon monitors can make sure the house rules are being honored, and also so people can watch, and it becomes like an added benefit, an added, if I've drawn a crowd, then I'm getting my ego stroked while I'm playing, which is kind of fun. And so there's sort of a performative component to these public parties. And so people see you play, right? And so eventually somebody just was like, hey, would you want to perform? And of course, the answer is yes, because I'm service oriented and I do enjoy when people watch. So I'm like, it's like hitting multiple buttons. Like I get to play, I get to show off that I'm playing, and I get to help out whoever needs the performance done.
Oh, you're just checking off boxes all the way down the list.
Right.
So do you have like set people that you perform with, or does it vary depending on just who's there?
Yeah, it does depend. I have a few play partners, and I have my like romantic partner, and so the play partners have various levels of interest. Again, you mentioned exhibitionism, and some simply just don't have that, and so the crowd doesn't add. So that's going to be my last choice, obviously, because the crowd can make it hotter, then you want that person who's going to be aroused by the crowd. I most often perform with my romantic partner because she's really dependable, and I know she's going to be at the same events as me. But I like to try to switch it up and play with other people. But I would really rarely. I don't think I actually would ever consider like performing with somebody who I didn't know already, because it's can be really distracting, and you want to be able to know like what the person wants, and you don't have to, like, if it was somebody who I just had met, it might be a bad idea because I would need to like pay more attention to them and how they're reacting and what they need than I would be able to do while the performance was happening.
Oh yeah, the established level of communication would definitely.
Yeah, especially if it's like really loud and you don't have the benefit of verbal communication.
Yeah.
If I'm like whipping somebody, I'm like several feet behind them. I can't like listen.
Yeah, having an insight into the person's body language is definitely a perk there.
Mm-hmm.
So has there been any performances that you've done that you thought went like just above and beyond the best performance you think you've ever done? You came out of the end of it and you were like, I'll never top that one.
I don't think I would say that because there's always room for growth. I can remember like drawing a crowd and I was doing a scene and we just had like really good energy, me and this new person and somebody being like, "Wow, that was like really cool. That was amazing. I really liked that." And I wasn't even like in my performer brain, right? I was just kind of like in it I think intimacy is like really attractive and really cool to see. And so like when you really connect on stage, it's kind of magical, right? I always, when I think back, I once I had like a play partner and my romantic partner, and I put them both on the same like spanking bench, like stacked on top of each other, and I was flogging them, and I was doing like there was 4 ass cheeks, right? And so I was going like quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4, like rhythmically with the floggers, and that was pretty fun. But honestly, I think that was a performance where there was like almost nobody in the crowd, so I didn't have to worry about what people were thinking. I was just having fun.
Well, yeah. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, then it kind of takes any of the desire to keep doing it out of it.
Yeah, well, it can be really distracting, and so I think on the other end of the spectrum, there are performances where I was just kind of doing the thing and like wasn't really feeling connected, and those are probably going to be my less enjoyable performances because there wasn't that level of intimacy, which is really like the fire.
And I can imagine that would translate to the audience. They'd probably sense that you're not really into it, so it's going to lessen how much they're into it.
Mm-hmm.
The Ludiverse is sponsored by the House of Algos. Go to gumroad.com/House of Algos for a wide number of recorded classes on BDSM topics, including mindfucking, negotiation, knife play, fire play, flogging, whips, developing your dom or sub side, finding play partners, and much more. And use discount code COMMUNICATE, COMMUNICATE, for 10% off of any purchase. That's House of Algos, HOUSEOFALGOS. All right, back to your book. Would you like to
Yes.
maybe do a kind of a author's interview kind of explanation of what your book's about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm happy to give you the elevator pitch, or we can go like more in depth.
Okay, so when did you decide that you needed to write a book?
It was probably around a year ago. I realized that it was going to be a really good exposure opportunity, but I also had sort of identified a topic which had not been written about in the way that I know it. And so I wanted to share that knowledge with people and give people an opportunity to learn, and also, create an opportunity for exposure and to help, people understand about, what I have to offer.
It only took you less than a year to write this book. That's pretty impressive.
Yep, about 6 months. Yeah, about 6 months. I spent a lot of time talking about it, honestly, before I started writing it.
Yeah, I've got some author friends that would be pretty jealous of that.
Yeah. Well, and it's not. I mean, there's not a lot of fluff. I'm dyslexic, and so like, I abhor books that are like just made longer for the sake of being longer. And so it's 133 pages. It's right to the point, and I hope that it's like really easy to read. I've heard that from some people, but I didn't want to make it harder to read than it had to be because I want it to be accessible for everybody.
Well, I mean, 133 pages, you probably read through that in an afternoon if you really buckled down to it. There
Yeah.
you go. That's accessible to everybody.
Right. I did the audiobook and it clocked in at like 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Well, there you go. That's a couple days transit and, to and from work.
There you go. Yeah. Um,
So is it available digitally too, or just physical and audio?
yeah, no, it's all three. So it's you can get the paperback, you can get the audiobook, or you can get the ebook. Those are all available through Amazon. You can also get the paperback signed with a custom inscription from me by going to that gumroad.com/House of Algos link.
All right. So there you go, folks. There's no excuse to not find out the information other than lack of interest, because It's available any way you can get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I wanted to make it really accessible. I know personally I love to be able to get a physical book, but then also have the audiobook so that if I get fatigued from reading, then I don't have to worry about that. So you get to hear my seductive voice the whole time.
Your voice is like melted caramel in my ears.
I think you owe me a tip for that.
So, what's the book about?
Well, I tried to make a really spot-on title. So it's about mind fucking. It's about the sexual practice of mind fucking. And, mind fucking mindfully means that we're not just doing the practice, we're also doing the practice in a way that doesn't do harm, that is ethical, that is consensual, and that is erotic, right? And I think, I've done my best to cast a really wide net so that anything that really is mind fucking is included. They might have caught some other things. So I would describe mind fucking is as little as setting up expectations and then deviating from those expectations, right? Like, let's say I'm giving somebody a spanking and I'm like, tap, tap, whack, tap, tap, whack, tap, tap. Now they're expecting a whack, right? And I'm not doing it. Do I hit them really softly now and mess with them, or do I hit them hard but like at a delayed rate? That is really subtle, and I think we all do things like that. The other thing that is really common that we do is we sort of hide information, but sort of let that person know we've hidden information. Like, oh, I've got a surprise for you when you get home, right? And that anticipation can be half the fun. It also can be like way more complex, like staged kidnapping and things like that. And it can be like really complex role playing. It can be all kinds of things. I've even sort of broken it down into 7 categories. So there wasn't, because nobody wrote this book, there was no like breakdown of what a mindfuck can be. And so I've gone and done that. And so I've described types of mindfucking as expectation, perceived power, illusion, asymmetric information, perspective alteration, degrading or ennobling, and humiliation. And so that first one that I mentioned with the tap tap whack rhythm, that would be expectation. And then the kidnapping, the fake kidnapping, right? We're not advocating actual kidnapping here. Would be like perceived power, potentially a perspective alteration. If they don't know where they're going or who's involved, that's asymmetric information. It could be degrading if the person is, degraded by the notion of being kidnapped, right? The other thing that I did is I wanted to make sure to not just get lost in the intellectual. I wanted to like set aside time and space in the book to really look at what people are doing. What are the things that people do when they practice mindfucking? Mindfucking is not just some idea, it's a practice. It's alive and well in the world. And so I took stories, I took interviews from people, and I got, ways to include them in the book so that we get to hear these like really sexy stories from people who have had these experiences.
Well, it's a lot of information for 133 pages.
I did my best.
Well, ladies, gentlemen, and everything in between, if that seems interesting to you, and it's available, I'll have some links for that in the show notes too. When you decided to write, I have a lot of trouble with writer's block, and I know some other friends that do. But did you have any trouble with that, or did you have the information so like preset that it just kind of dumped out onto the pages?
I think we all have our challenges, right? And so it would be lying if I said that there were no challenges in writing the book. I don't think writer's block was my challenge. I think organizing the material was my challenge, and finishing the work was my challenge. So for me, I just wrote a big outline, everything I wanted to talk about, and expanded it until I couldn't expand it anymore. And then I took each one of those tiny little subtopics and I just did a free write and, came back and said, okay, well, what is there left to write? And then I tried to put it together in a way that made sense. The interludes were written entirely separately and then just like inserted in after. But I think the real challenge for me was like, what have I said already? What haven't I said already? What does somebody brand new to this topic need to hear right now? Right? Because I wanted to make sure that it was valuable for somebody who was experienced. It was also valuable for somebody who was like had zero experience, because I think it's irresponsible to put this book out because I can't make sure that the listener or the reader has a specific level of experience, right? And so this may be for some people their introduction to BDSM, and so I needed to introduce those topics. The other thing that was really challenging for me was keeping the information organized. Like where does this need to go? If it needs to be said, then fine, but where does it need to be said? And like, if I'm assuming the person doesn't have the knowledge to start with, then what do I need to say first so that when I say this, it makes sense? And then the editing, I didn't pay for a professional editor. I think I will next time, but I edited the book myself with the help of my friends, and that was really hard to get through the book. I think I had to read it like 5 times in the editing process at least, just to get through the editing. And it's one of those things that never feels like it can be totally done, right? But at a certain point, you have to just say it's done, or it'll never be finished, right?
Yeah, I've dealt with that myself on a few things. I've done editing with my author friends because, well, I can't write. I can read the heck out of some stuff.
There you go. Maybe you can help me with the next one.
Maybe. I don't know if I'm quite up to that level. So if somebody were to try to get into educational side of BDSM or any kink or fetish for that matter, do you have any advice that you would give them?
Yeah, I mean, just practice the crap out of a presentation. Organize yourself with an outline, make a PowerPoint that matches the outline, present it so much that you have it memorized, present it to anybody who'll listen, present it on Zoom with nobody there, and record it and watch it again. Presenting is a skill. Teaching is a skill. So even if you have perfect knowledge of, fire play, for example, it doesn't mean you're, in a position to teach it. You need to learn to teach. And there's also a big barrier. Some people forget that when you're teaching, it's not about you, it's about them. And I think some people miss that.
I used to be a teacher. I mean, it was preschool, so not the same area, but yeah, the knowledge that it's not about you is something a lot of people seem to struggle with at first before they get comfortable just trying to better the world.
Yeah, there's nothing like trial by fire, right?
What exactly is involved in the coaching aspects? Is it and how is it different than the teaching, the educator part?
Coaching is really interesting. It's one-on-one, and sometimes there are some teaching aspects that come in, but usually it's not like an information download. It's not like hey, let me tell you all I know about this. I mean, you can always just take a private class, and that's what that would be. But coaching replaces mentoring in a lot of ways. The BDSM community and the leather community before it really relied on a teacher-student relationship or mentor-mentee relationship where one person would be taken under another person's wing and really brought up to speed on these cultural changes, because BDSM, leather, S&M, they're all like cultures, right? And there's this cultural information that you need to operate in that space. But unfortunately, with the way that the AIDS epidemic wiped out a lot of knowledgeable people, and also the way that BDSM is growing so quickly, there aren't resources for that. And so, a lot of what I do is like a rent a mentor, if you will. And so that's people finding themselves, people figuring out, how to communicate their needs, people learning how to navigate their fetishes and kinks not necessarily matching up exactly with their partners. And then there's also sort of some life coaching components to it, where if you want to be a good dominant, you need to be in control of your life. Because if if you can't keep the lights on, you can't really control somebody, right? You can't really take control of somebody else's life if you haven't taken control of your own. And then for submissives, it's about self-knowledge and about communication. I think there's this perception that submissives have, unfortunately, where they go, "Oh, I don't have any limits, do whatever you want." And that's supposed to be like the most attractive. And it's not. It's not, because you do have limits, you just don't know them. And I can't do whatever I want. I can only do what you're okay with, and you can't tell me what that is. And so now I'm just walking into a minefield, right? But honestly, the intimacy coaching does a lot for people who are not, quote unquote, in the BDSM community or in the leather community. Uh, it serves people who didn't get good opportunity to explore their sexuality, or didn't use the opportunity they had initially to explore their sexuality. And so what I find myself doing a lot of is working with people who are, perhaps in the second half of their life, that are really eager to come back to an exploration stage, to come back to, really feeling out what are their sexual needs, what are their sexual wants, because, because of shame, or because of this unfortunate socialization that suggests people's needs are not important, that they just missed that chance in the first place. And so a lot of what I do is helping process shame and process, this information that we have about ourselves, and find ways that people can find what they need. I like to say there's no bad fetish. There's nothing that somebody can want sexually that is inherently bad. Sometimes we need to role play instead of doing the thing, because the thing might be illegal or unethical, right? Or simply impossible. If you have a fantasy about like being 1 inch tall and being inserted into somebody's asshole, that's great, but it's not going to happen, not really. So like, let's create some role play scenarios where we can have that experience in a fantasy realm, and in a way that's not going to affect our lives negatively.
Yeah, it's like people with vor kinks. They can't actually be devoured, so they have to figure out pillows and padding to simulate
Yeah,
it for them.
absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of fetishes that would be unethical to act on, and I think there's this misperception that the person is inherently unethical, and they're not. Giving them is only going to make it harder for them to operate within that ethical space and within a way that they feel okay about themselves.
Oh yeah. It's one of the things that makes it hard to be open about like your kinks and fetishes and stuff. There's such a large vocal that just downplays all of it. It's like, no, it's all evil, it's all bad. The only ethical and moral way to do it is missionary, quietly, in your bedroom, only for procreation.
Yeah, it sounds like somebody has a shaming kink.
Maybe. That's
Yeah.
never thought of that.
Well, usually it's about power. Usually it's about manipulating people for your own gain.
That's something I never thought of. So, when you do the coaching, and it's kind of a one on two if it's a
Hmm.
couple. I mean, that's a thing, right?
Yeah, I do. Usually it's the submissive or the woman that will bring in the man, but yes.
Do you get a lot of pushback? Like, I know what I'm doing. I just want pointers, or do a lot of them just kind of like, you're here to help me teach, and I will learn.
Yeah, no, I don't get a lot of resistance. Especially because I try to communicate really well with people. And so sometimes people will say to me like, "Oh, I need to hear it this way instead of that way." Like, it was funny. I was actually on a phone call yesterday with one of my coaching customers, and they said, "Look, just plain tell me to do it. Don't ask me to do it. Don't like try to sweeten the deal. Just tell me to do it." Right? And so that was a great opportunity for me to really hear how they needed me to communicate, right? So had I not known that, and I would be like, well, why don't you do it this way? Or maybe, it'd be really nice if you could do it that way, right? And then they just feel manipulated. And so, and then I'll just say, you need to do this, do it, right? And some people are the opposite. Like, I personally, if I was in a coaching session, if somebody was like, do it, do it, do it, I don't want to do it now because you told me to do it, So I'll say, if you want to help me, and I coach my partner in this, right? Because I want her to give me feedback. But if she says, turn left up here, turn right down there while we're driving someplace, honestly, I have a reaction, and so the way to get me to do it is, the fastest way is to turn right up here, right? So now I'm making the choice. As silly as it sounds, we just need to learn each other and learn how to communicate with each other. And that's my first job as a coach, is to learn how to communicate with you in particular. And so I don't, and there's not really a lot of resistance because I'm there coming to see me. They appreciate that I have, wisdom to impart, and that my job is to help them. And so it doesn't, it doesn't really serve them to waste time, fighting me on things.
One thing that keeps coming up on the show for every episode so far, every interview, has been the need for communication. It's always a two-way street. It's if both sides aren't communicating properly, then somebody in there or both of them aren't getting the full experience that they want.
Yeah, absolutely. I teach a dominance class and I teach a submission class. And both of those classes, I say the two most important things are self-knowledge and communication. They're going to help you be a better dominant. They're going to they're going to help you be a better submissive.
Very wise words. So the House of I'm sorry.
Algos.
Algos.
No
I'm
worries.
sorry. Yeah, I have trouble remembering words sometimes. Is that also where they could find the information on your coaching classes, or is that something separate?
Yeah, no, so houseofalgos.com is my website, and you can find information about my classes, about coaching, about upcoming events. That's a good place to sign up for the newsletter. And yeah, that is a good place to go. And that's actually the name of my leather household. So I have a household where we have like set intentions and set protocols and all those things for people who I'm in intimate relationships with.
Well, it definitely makes it easier to remember. Okay. If anybody's interested, all the links will be in the show notes. So, is there anything else about the teaching, the performing, the coaching I didn't ask about that you really wanted to get out?
No, I mean, I think I've got it. I think the one thing I would tell people is that, mentoring is still a thing that people do. But I think it's not something you approach empty-handed. It's really tough for people who are in a position to mentor because they get asked a lot by people who are like barely in it, and we want to see people who are committed. We want to see people who are invested in the community and invested in bettering themselves. And that's going to be a much greater ask. And also the intimacy coaching, I think is good for anybody who wants to have amazing sex and fantastic relationships. So I would definitely encourage people to reach out to me while I don't have too many clients to take new ones.
Well, I can't see that many people would have a problem adding more, fantastic sex in their lives.
Yeah, that's my dream. And then when they have the best orgasm of their life, they'll think of me.
Okay. Okay. And I hear that you are also starting your own podcast. Would you care to promote that on here?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Honestly, we're still in like development phase, so I haven't really even settled on a name, but we've got the content, and we're building that, and it's gonna be essentially kink-friendly intimacy coaching podcast, and we're just gonna interview people that could use coaching, right? So a lot of people come to me and they're not in a position to pay for the coaching. But I want to help everybody, and I think it's a great opportunity too, because nobody has a problem that nobody else has, right? Like everybody, we all share these challenges in our lives, and so I think it's a really good opportunity because each episode I'm sitting down with a different person or couple. We're just going through a coaching session, and it's really informative. I've even, my producer has listened through the episodes, and he was like, "Wow, I never thought about that." Like that is already helping me, so that's really cool because with such a small audience already, we've been able to help some people. So that is again not officially named, and so it'll be challenged for people to find it just yet. But we're looking to launch in September, and certainly if you go to my website, you're going to be able to find some information about that as soon as it's available. And also, I'm always looking for guests. So if you're listening and you love, coaching, but it's not in your budget, and you're open to being on the show, and reach out to me. Again, my email is houseofalgos@gmail.com.
When you do decide on a name and get all that set up, I can go ahead and I'll come back and I'll edit it into this episode. And if you
Fantastic.
decide you want to come back on and talk about that podcast when it starts actually get going, then just go ahead and shoot me a message, and I'll have you on and we can chat.
Awesome.
So
I really appreciate it.
It's been wonderful speaking with you. There's been some really good information shared. I wish you luck with all of your teaching and with your book sales.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure getting to talk with you. And if you need anything from me after the fact, just let me know.
I will do that, and I'll be looking for that email after I get done here, and I can actually pay attention to the email with all of your links, and I'll get them into the show notes, and I'll shoot you a message when the show goes live.
Fantastic. I really appreciate that.
If anybody out there has any further questions or comments that they would like to bring up to this guest, then by all means contact me. Facebook, Twitter, LudiverseP, email ludiversepodcast@gmail.com. I can get all these questions to the guests and get back to you. If you want to be on the show, if you have suggestions for further subjects, let me know. I'm not hard to get a hold of. But till next time, keep communicating, keep each other safe, and just remember to have fun. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Ludiverse. If you have any questions or comments, contact us on Twitter or Facebook. Just search for the Ludiverse. Remember to rate and review wherever you listen. If you want to help support the show, please consider donating to our Patreon.